Go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for roll call vote, or sorry, roll call, please.
Sand City. Here. County of Monterey. Seaside.
Here.
Marina Coast.
Here.
Delray Oaks.
Here.
Salinas.
Present.
Pacific Grove.
Here.
Castroville.
Here.
Veranda.
Here.
Monterey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, and then I'm actually having issue getting access to my email. Could you, there's questions that we need to ask Kent for his participation?
No, Kent is participating. We agendize his location. So there's nothing that needs to be reported.
Okay, okay, perfect. And so all votes today will be done by roll call vote since we have a virtual participant. And thank you for being with us, Kent, virtually here today.
You got it.
Alrighty.
Glad to be here.
We'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Tina to kick this off here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Somebody moved the flag on me, so. All right, with that, we'll go to item number 4, additions to the agenda. Any additions? Not seeing any.
No changes.
So we'll go to item number 5, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and ask for roll call, please.
Sand City.
Aye.
Seaside. Marina Coast.
Yes.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Salinas.
Aye.
Pacific Grove.
Aye.
Castroville.
Yes.
Veranda.
Yes.
Monterey.
And that's a yes for me.
Motion carries 9 yes and 1 absent.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to item number 6, public comments. Open it up for folks that want to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. If you're online, you can use the raise hand function on Zoom. Not seeing anybody here in person. Give another second here. All right, seeing none, we'll move to item number 7, presentation. A is update on feasibility studies to address seawater intrusion by Salinas Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And with that, I will pass it to Paul for introduction.
Thank you, Tyler. So I'd like to welcome Perrette Harmon and Sarah Hargrave from the Salinas Valley Basin GSA. It's been a long time since the GSA has actually done an update to our board, so we're very thankful for them to make time for this and bring us up to speed on all the work that's been going on. So thank you, Perrette.
Thank you, Paul. I think the presentation is magically appearing there. Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Like magic.
Magic. So good evening, Chair and board members. Perrette Harmon. Most of the presentation today is actually on these feasibility studies. So I'm going to be the boring part of the presentation here. Let's see if I can get this working. And then Sarah will, maybe. Okay. Okay.
Right before you begin your presentation, I just want to let everybody know that Glenn Church, our County of Monterey rep, is now present.
And it's very appropriate. Glenn is one of our board members. So just a little bit of, for those, we have a lot of agencies, public agencies in Monterey County that all manage water in some shape or form. So just a little bit why we, Salinas Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, I think we have the longest name at this point, and we are the new kid on the block. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, 2014, a little over 10 years ago, it got signed into law. And what it did is it gave birth to many, many new public agencies up and down the state. Salinas Valley Basin GSA is responsible for 6 sub-basins. They're on the map there. You can kind of find where we are. The sub-basins extend all the way down to the San Luis Obispo County boundary. And the subbasins were defined by the Department of Water Resources. They have something called Bulletin 118, where they draw the boundaries. Are they perfect? No, but I think that's the best guess, best effort to manage groundwater that is out of sight, out of mind, and that's what had happened for, oh, no, we're not going back. Let's go the other way. I'm not doing very good here. Okay, there we go. So surface water rights were in the state of California are 100 years old, 1914. It took 100 years for the state to come up with an act that manages or sets some guidelines how to manage groundwater, because it is in this region, in the county of Monterey, it's the main source of water for beneficial use. So what's our role? Why we need another agency? So we are lean and mean. It's we have a big jurisdiction, but we have very few people, very few staff members, and I see our role as kind of convener, collaborator, partner. We are not here to take over any of the responsibilities of the existing groundwater or water management agencies, but we're really trying to get rid of or look past the silo effect, because all of the existing public agencies, they have their own jurisdictions, and the main mission is to take care of their stakeholders there, and groundwater doesn't know those jurisdictions. So we are really trying to kind of be the engagement and collaboration vehicle and working with all of you. It is done by implementing, first having plans that are called GSPs, groundwater sustainability plans. Each of those subbasins must have one. And one of the 6 subbasins is critically overdrafted. It's 18400. That plan had to be done by 2020. And it has that basin has to be sustainable, reach sustainability by 2040. The other subbasins have extra 2 years. So we are in the implementation phase. Every 5 years, DWR requires to have a plan evaluation, 5-year evaluation. We just submitted that for 18400. And the sustainabilities that Sarah will be talking about, the feasibility studies, those are, the main focus is 18400. It's critically overdrafted basin, and it is on a tight timeline. So the groundwater is complicated, but at the same time, it's kind of simple in the sense of it's kind of like water budgets, financial budgets, you all know very well. Water budget is quite similar. You can't take more out that gets put in there. So the pumping out needs to be less or equal to recharge. And if more is extracted, that is recharged, it causes deficit. If the deficit is in Central Valley, you probably have heard subsidence. If there's nothing else filling it in, the land could drop. It doesn't happen here because seawater moves in. So very big challenge, and that is why 18400 is critically overdrafted. And this is our biggest challenge that we need to address with this agency is seawater intrusion. The other equally important and critical indicator is groundwater levels, and they have been dropping, and that's another issue that we need to address, how to bring the water budget in balance and make sure that the groundwater levels either stay stable or start coming up. With that, feasibility studies. So that's where we've been working for the last 5 years with 18400. And fortunately, we did receive DWR. There's 2 rounds of grants. We received both of them. The second one was along with Marina Coast Water District, one of the partner agencies. And we've been fortunate to be able to use that money to do a lot of evaluation, exploration, but also make sure we have good data, because you can't really, it's hard to find solutions if we don't know how deep the problems are, or what is the condition of the groundwater. So I think, Sarah, that's where I step aside and let you to take, so the bottom one works.
Good evening, Sarah Hartgrave, Deputy General Manager. Pleased to be with you this evening. We have been working on a number of different studies, and of course, the Monterey One Water District has a very important role in your support for operating the Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project, the Salinas River Diversion Facility, and the reclamation plant, which has been in place for a very long time. We've been collaborating with your staff and Monterey County Water Resources Agency staff to look at are there opportunities to optimize that system. We're not here to talk about that primarily tonight, but wanted to really acknowledge that that's a very important place that we're intersecting with your agency. We've also been doing feasibility studies on new project ideas. I'm going to talk about one in particular this evening because it's the one that also would have a direct connection with your agency in terms of the discharge component of it. But I want to make sure that you are aware that we're looking at a multiple array of different projects. We're not focusing on just one specific feasibility study. We've been doing several, and we have more to do. So really, our overall effort is to figure out what is the best way to address our seawater intrusion concerns and the risks of seawater intrusion continuing to migrate inland in the future. And then where can we actually find the best project that will achieve the greatest benefit for the best cost? So that's a work in progress. We have completed one of our feasibility studies, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Feasibility Study. We published that in January. We're still working on the brackish groundwater restoration project that I'll speak to more, and demand management, that how do you take less out, is something that we're looking at closely. We're also looking at, are there other projects on the Salinas River that could potentially achieve the same types of benefits that we're seeing with the brackish groundwater restoration project? And that is a study that's just getting underway. It's really looking at how can we maximize a water right on the Salinas River that hasn't been exercised, that's referred to as Permit 11043. And then in addition, we're looking at, is there a way to deliver more recycled water or other sources of in-lieu supplies to areas that are not in the existing CSIP distribution system? Inland of the CSIP area, I don't want to, oh, and I do have a pointer. Oh, it doesn't quite go on the screen though. Okay, so in between the city of Salinas and CSIP is where we are seeing seawater intrusion effects that are migrating inland of the CSIP distribution system. And as a result, we've seen quite a few wells drilled into the deep aquifers in that area. And that is just sort of another major management issue of the principal aquifers in the 18400. So that's another feasibility project that we're going to be working on. But what I wanted to just sort of touch on briefly, I'm sure you've all seen maps of from the Water Resources Agency, their historic mapping of seawater intrusion and how it has progressed inland over time. It was first detected in the 1940s, and these maps, the color scheme is the years and how seawater intrusion has progressed over time, with on the right-hand side, in the 400-foot aquifer, which is the principal aquifer that's being pumped from, new islands of seawater intrusion appeared in 2015, right at the same time that SGMA was enacted. And so that's one of the areas of concern. That's also the area that's not covered in the CSIP distribution system. So looking forward.
Just, sorry to stop you, but in the point that you were just making is to identify that the effects of the extraction is causing issues outside of the immediate area.
It's that extractions in the subbasin have progressed, and the inland migration of seawater intrusion have now gone beyond the area that was originally in the CSIP purple pipe distribution system that was put in place in 1998 to address the seawater intrusion that was occurring at that time. And now it's migrated even further inland. And this are images from our modeling looking 50 years into the future, what would happen over time if we took no action. And this is a status quo scenario with the current levels of pumping. So literally a status quo. If we did nothing, we would see seawater intrusion migrating well into the east side of Salinas over the 50-year planning horizon that we're working in. In the 400-foot aquifer, we have a similar image. The seawater intrusion migrates quite a bit inland from where it is now. And then the model is simulating the potential for additional islands to occur. I mean, we don't know exactly that would happen. We need to have more data to know which wells are screened in both aquifers, and we're working on modifying our results. But the potential is there that we could see additional islands into the future. And to your point, Mayor Williamson, that's really driven by the groundwater levels inland being so far below sea level. This is a map on the right that shows the groundwater levels relative to sea level, and you can see how there's a cone of depression that was referred to as the east side trough historically, that is in the east side of Salinas. That's really part of what's pulling that seawater in, because the groundwater levels are so low that it's simply flowing downhill by gravity. The deep brown is over 60 feet drop, additional groundwater decline in the no project scenario. So this is why my main point is that we do have a problem that we need to address. And we're looking at what are all of the different ways that we could do that. We can optimize our existing facilities, which we really want to make the most of the infrastructure we have. We need to manage our deep aquifers in some way. We need to think about how to reduce demands and to help raise the groundwater levels. And then the two projects that we've been evaluating, one is the idea of injecting surface water to push seawater intrusion back. And the other is to treat brackish water for an in-lieu supply and create a barrier to the pump, using pumping as a barrier to the intrusion. So it's that last bullet that I'm going to speak to them primarily from here, which is the project that we're calling the Brackish Groundwater Restoration Project. We had grant funds to do this. What's missing from this graphic and from our maps, which I realized too late, is the key reason why we're here with you this evening, which is that this is a project that would rely upon your outfall for the discharge of the treatment from the treatment facility. And that is a critical piece of feasibility. So as part of our feasibility evaluations, we have had conversations with your staff about the capacity of the outfall, and we're aware that there's others who are planning to utilize it. And so it's timely for us to just share with you sort of the magnitude of the projects that we're looking at, because it would require that kind of partnership to make it feasible. But the general idea also, and that's illustrated in this graphic, is to extract brackish water in the intruded area along the coast, parallel to the coast, treat it, and then deliver it inland to both agricultural and municipal end users, and to inject it in the winter season months when demands are lower. So we've so far evaluated 3 alternatives: a small, medium, large. We've done modeling of these compared to the no project alternative. I'm going to just share with you the medium alternative project results. And again, for scale, the concept would be extracting quite a large volume of water from along the coast, treating it, and having a 70% recovery, and having 46,000 acre feet of water available for beneficial use. So in this concept, we would have enough water to provide all of the water needs in the city of Salinas and the city of Marina and in Castroville. We would extract the water from these wells that are along the coast, then the red, and then the blue lines are the distribution system that would take water over to Salinas and to the Marina Coast Water District system and to the CSIP system and be able to replace all of the supplemental well pumping and CSIP. And this is the effect on the seawater intrusion. It's a quite dramatic result. We have other presentations that show other modeling scenarios. We're going to continue to look at various scenarios, but we are impressed by these results because they so clearly help to halt the seawater intrusion and pull the brackish water back towards the coast. Go ahead.
Sorry, it might be helpful if you could describe a little bit of the engineering about how exactly this works to create a barrier.
That's a very good question. So you think about, let me go back to this graphic here. So the ocean is coming in, the aquifers outcrop to the ocean. The seawater is coming in where it outcrops. And the idea is to capture the seawater before it's continuing to progress inland. And then a well is extracting water from, full diameter around it. So it's also pulling the brackish water from the inland side. And it's starting to pull that brackish water back towards those barrier wells. And then by treating the water and delivering it, you're also taking all of those wells offline, so they're no longer pumping. So you don't have that continued force trying to draw the water out from inland. And then the injection of the treated water is pushing it from the inland side with fresh water, pushing seawater back because they have different density. It has that effect. So does that help?
Does. Thank you.
Okay, so it's sort of a concept that's both catching it at the coast, delivering it to reduce pumping, and then injecting it to push it back is the combined effect.
And the idea is that you're literally creating a barrier where it won't allow this further saltwater intrusion.
That is the concept. That is the goal.
Just trying to help maybe a little bit with
Yeah.
some of the folks that.
Appreciate that very much. So this is the 180 aquifer. These are the results in the 400-foot aquifer. You can see that island still is kind of hanging out there because it's stranded between the two, but it is cleaning itself up. And then this is a graph, maps that compare the small, medium, and large against the no project alternative. So the red line is the no project scenario. The blue line is the small project alternative. The yellow is the medium. The green is the large. The black line is is our minimum threshold. So in the groundwater sustainability plan framework, our minimum threshold is where we need to be. We can't go beyond it or we have undesirable results in the Sigma speak. And so that's our minimum line. Our measurable objective, our goal is to bring the seawater intrusion back to Highway 1, which may or may not be realistic, but we have to meet that minimum. So right now, on the historic maps, 2020 is well beyond the 2017 line, so we need some mechanism to be able to push it back. And so that's the super high line summary of this big idea that we have. But again, I want to reiterate that we have other next steps. This is a work in progress. We've gotten feedback from some of the end users. We're taking that information in. We're thinking about several additional scenarios of the project configuration, looking at potentially delivering less water to the cities, but injecting more, looking at injecting into the east side, and would that have an effect also to help raise the groundwater levels that are help driving the seawater intrusion issue? And we also have heard quite a few concerns about how are you going to pay for this? What are the costs and benefits? And that is our next phase of work. Those are very important questions. We don't have the answers to them. I wish we could just have it all at once, but it's a work in progress. So we're going to be continuing to study this project. We're thinking about pilot plans for how to actually do some proof of concept testing in the field. And then we have these other feasibility studies that we're continuing to work on. So big picture, going back to Paret's presentation, we have these 5-year evaluations that are due to the state in January 2027. And we're aiming to have a process to determine which projects will move forward by the fall of 2026. So that's when we will really be at a point of decision making around these concepts. And thank you. I know that we took a lot more time than we were allotted, but appreciate the
I
opportunity.
take some
to
ownership over that. I asked you a couple of questions in there. So
Sure.
thank you for the presentation. It was really great. We'll open it up for questions. You want to start off?
Yeah, so where will this proposed pilot project be located?
We've been in discussion with the Castroville Community Services District about doing a pilot of brackish desal treatment because they have a well that has been intruded and taken offline, and they are looking at what are their options for water supply. Now, if and when CalAM's project is constructed and operating, it plans to deliver water to Castroville. So we're thinking about, what is the time frame for a pilot of brackish treatment, which is different than seawater treatment.
Yeah, and second part of that, I was wondering because in Sand City, our desal is brackish water and we own the water rights there. So I was wondering, would this impact our plant?
Don't think so. I think that's a very good question to look at wearing your water master hat, looking at the maps. And I think the area of effect to Sand City is pretty far south. So I don't see a concern with that.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, your proposed wells are all north of the Salinas River, where Marianne, yours is so far south. I don't know that there's much interaction between the two.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Please.
Just,
Oh,
I came in a little bit late and I know you just briefly touched upon the cost, but did you go any more other detail on that? Because I know that's the,
Elephant.
that's a real fast.
Elephant in the room.
We have engineering estimate and it's, I'm gonna say it out because you'll probably hear it anyway. It's 1 billion with B. So it's, what do we have? How do we call it? It's a lot of money. It's astounding. But we also have a per acre foot unit cost, and that's $2,500 an acre foot. If you compare it with any other large new supply projects up and down the state, that's right in the ballpark there. But it's obviously the next question is who is going to be asked to pay for that. And I think that's where we're trying to move away from, because at the moment, those people on the map that are to be envisioned to receive the water, the assumption is those are the people that will be paying for that. And I would really want people to not go there, because we're looking at who will benefit. Is it only those people? Is it the whole county? Is it the whole state? Is the whole nation that receives our lettuce? So we're really kind of trying to, that's the funding strategies we're going to be doing, is really looking at what is the nexus there, and who should be paying for that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I like the project, but that is my real concern is it's like $1 billion to $1.5 billion is what I hear, depending on the size. And I'm really, should say, speak it, it's a good idea, isn't it? Is,
Or they don't get you on record.
yeah. And I know it's going to be something we're going to need federal or state help on, and federal dollars are not very dependable at this point. So state's going to have to pick up for a lot of loss of federal dollars, and this is a lot of money. And the other part that I think is important to realize is, what is this? Probably 170 to 250 million possibly in operational costs per year. And that's another sizable part, and where's that going to come from? So, I mean, it's a great looking project, but it's expensive and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think everybody should be, as we move ahead, should be aware of this.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up question to the funding thing before we jump off of it. You were saying it kind of falls in the range of a ballpark of what we would expect for a large-scale project. Could anybody speak to how the cost per acre foot compares to, say, desal or Pure Water Monterey, just as examples so that people can have a sense locally what that looks like?
Look at Certainly, Chair. So Pure Water Monterey is about $4,100 per acre foot injected into the ground. So what CalAm extracts, that's the cost. The early projections of CalAm's desal based on the 2017 estimates, I think we're in the range at the time of $6,000 an acre foot. I did have an opportunity to talk to one of their consultants who are updating those costs as we speak, and they're anticipating later this year having updated construction costs and therefore per acre foot costs. So the $2,500 per acre foot that Sarah and Perrette say, that's right in the ballpark with other brackish water treatment facilities in the state as well. If you look at the ones that Ron, Eric, and I went to years ago, they were at like $1,500 an acre foot, obviously far less infrastructure intensive than what Brett is showing. So at the planning level, that's as good as anything.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you taking that one on for us. All right, I saw some questions over here.
No, I'll go after.
You're so kind. So $1 billion is a lot of money. What's it going to cost us if we don't do it? So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of rhetorical, right? I mean, if we can't feed the world, then what?
Yeah, and but we need that answer. And so some of the economic analysis that we're going to be doing is a cost of no project and trying to kind of extrapolate that out.
Yes, that's why I let you go first, because that was my question. I think, I had two, which was, what is the larger project? And I think sometimes we stay away from that because it's more than 1.5. It's maybe 2, for example, right? But what is the cost of doing nothing? We pride ourselves on feeding the world, right? And we got the statistics that say we do half of that, close to that, right? Particularly when we're talking about agriculture. But it's other things that water is used for. And if we can't if that water is no longer there and underneath the ground, 15 years from now, because we just have intrusion, right? And it's gone. I just throw that out there because I think you guys had to have those numbers, not just what it costs, but when we don't have that water, what would it cost? I get, at least, how far do you go out? Do you take it 20 years, 25 years? But by then you could change your economy. But what would that look like if you had to change the so-called economy here in Monterey County? So I appreciate that. That was mine.
Okay. Question, since this is the project you've focused on, is this proven technology, or I heard the phrase idea, which I like ideas, but does this have a track record?
So brackish desalination definitely has a track record. There are a number of treatment facilities operating in the state, Sand City being one, another, and in inland areas where water is brackish, not because of an ocean, but because of natural salts in the ground. So yes, brackish treatment is definitely a proven technology. The concept of injection barriers are that, so in Orange County, they've addressed seawater intrusion through injection barriers. They used their recycled water for injection. We use it here for CSIP and for Pure Water Monterey. So recycled water is going to direct use as opposed to being used as the mechanism for having a source of water to inject. The concept of an extraction barrier by itself is not a proven technology. There are very few of them. Our GSP originally had a concept of just doing that by itself, but that's not what we're moving forward. We're moving forward with a combined project that has the three major components of extraction, treatment, in-lieu supply, and injection. So we've sort of evolved as things have developed in our feasibility work to have that concept.
So does the barrier compete or is it in conflict with the Cal-Am desal project in any way?
No, it covers a similar, it's in the, Cal-Am's project is within the space of this concept. But the real intention of the extraction alignment is to have that, the barrier is really having the wells along the entire length of the mouth of the Salinas Valley to capture that seawater intrusion rather than it being able to skirt around in certain locations.
And I want to go back to, how do you envision coming up with who pays?
Benefits.
So we have a great consultant that we contracted with ERA Consulting, and we are ERA Economics, and we are going to really trying to be thinking outside of the box. I mean, we're going to go to traditional, what are some ways of traditionally how we can get money, but then what are some of the ways that are maybe not typical? So we will do that first, and then we'll go to our stakeholders and kind of look for any ideas there. And so it's hard. It's a big dollar number, but there's no cheap new water projects, and there's not going to be. And I think also the economies of scale is really important. We've been showing the middle, the large per unit cost gets smaller. And then in my wild imagination is there a way to even blow it up bigger? Could we work with Cal-Am, for example? And could can we get more and more people behind it and more beneficial users out of it? And what would that look like? So I think that's where I see the GSA is kind of unique, that this is not our stakeholders, all of the counties our stakeholders, and how can we be looking out for all of them, regardless of who is, because we're not going to be constructing the project. My board has been kind of like, we are the planner agency and we'll be looking partners to construct it. So there's no boundaries to what could be the partners and how we could stitch it together to make it a little more palatable and a little more feasible for all of us.
Thank you.
All right, Kent, I see your hand up there.
Oh, Ken?
Kent, yeah, Kent's online.
So a lot of the questions I had have already been answered. But I do know that from previous presentations, once you start this, you cannot stop this pumping. And what worries me is the 200+ million operational costs per year. Is that sustainable? And from Monterey one side, do we have the capacity in the outfall to be able to take on that much extra capacity? So I guess I would that would be a Paul question.
So if I may, on the capacity thing, the capacity outfall, I'm going to use round numbers, so they're not entirely correct. About 80 million gallons a day we can push through the outfall. Our plant's rated at about 29.6. We're normally seeing flows around 17 million. So all that to say, there's a lot of capacity in the outfall. Of course, during extreme wet weathers, there isn't. If I'm hearing this correctly, I'd love switching between acre feet per year, million gallons per day, and gallons per minute. It's a lot of fun. But what I calculate is they're talking about 59 million gallons a day. If they're talking 70% recovery, that means there's about 18 million gallons per day of brackish water brine going out the outfall. If in fact the board agrees to it, that certainly seems within reason on the capacity of the outfall, particularly when we know we have Cal-Am, as you mentioned, requesting some capacity to the tune of, I guess, Matt, do you know this one? About 9 million gallons per day, plus or minus, but it'll be pulsed, so that's a different story. And then Marina Coast has requested, with their 3 projects, about 1 million gallons per day. I threw a lot of numbers out there, not to confuse you, but to say, generally speaking, there's capacity. We would have to tailor any agreements that we put together, whether it be with the SVB, GSA, Marina Coast, or Cal-Am, to have it interruptible, because when we have wastewater flows go out, that takes precedence. So, Kent, yeah, there's capacity.
Okay, and then I think Sarah, you touched on possible use of SRDF in the river. How far have you really researched that in terms of finding more or more supply through the river to inject into the aquifer?
So the aquifer storage and recovery feasibility study that we published is where we really dug into that question. That feasibility study was based on a GSP project that considered trying to take more higher flows off of the Salinas River diversion facility and maybe adjusting the season of the diversion and utilizing those existing facilities. Through our analysis, we found a certain amount of water, additional water that could be diverted under the existing water rights and through the existing operations. The amount of injection was limited in terms of its effects on seawater intrusion. And then also there's pretty significant constraints in utilizing the existing facilities with the turbidity concerns at the SRDF and the higher flows. So we developed an alternative approach looking at a new diversion using rainy well collectors or some other type of diversion to be able to divert in higher flows and not have the same constraints on the water quality issue in the wintertime when it's available. We are going to continue to look at that concept on a greater scale, and that is the permit 11043 feasibility study that we're now calling the Castroville and East Side Canals and Alternatives, because those are the diversion points that are named in that permit. But we're going to look at, are there better places to divert, and then just what would be the feasibility of modifications to the water right that would be associated with those ideas. We are planning to look at that in its maximum to compare it with this brackish groundwater restoration project to see if that is something that would achieve the same objectives at a lower cost. And that is the other feasibility work that we're just now undertaking. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Okay. You wanted to ask more questions?
I did just.
Let me just go to Tom and make sure everybody else gets a first chance, and then I'll shoot back over to you.
Well, I'm going to ask if you could pull up the map of the proposed wells. And while you're doing that, maybe Director Church can get his question asked and answered and come back to me.
Well, yeah, I'm just, and Sarah kind of touched upon what a point I'm making here is that, this isn't like the only option out here. I mean, we got to do something. Obviously, doing nothing is not an option. But again, what gives me pause in this whole thing is $1.5 billion. One, not just the construction, but also the operational costs and just to I mean, there's 11043. We have there's a lot of Monterey One water that's going out in the winter that, if we could find a way to store that, there are some options that need to be looked at here and need to be looked at really seriously before we go in that commitment. And I think as Kent pointed out, we go into this, you put this kind of investment into it, you're bought, sold, and everything into this project. And just to put into what $200 million means for operational cost perspective, that means about $500 for every man, woman, and child in this county would have to pay. And so I get really concerned that it could fall a burden on a heavier burden on some geographical areas, particularly closer to that. So I just think everybody needs to take a hard look here to make sure we're going down the right path.
Thank you. And I might want to ask a few questions to try and get a little finer understanding of this particular proposal. Certainly, I hope you'll look into Director Habino's question about what if we lose electrical power for a month, for example? What are the consequences to this barrier that you see in the right-hand slide? And I don't expect you to have an answer to that question right now. That's something you're going to look at. You did mention an earlier version of this, which was just extraction with no desalination. Is that correct? Conceptually, but it means you'd probably need another outfall because you'd be dumping eventually more or less pure seawater back into the ocean, right? If it's just an extraction barrier with no use of the extracted water other than to create the extraction barrier.
I don't know that I recall the modeling of extraction only, but that's something that we can reevaluate. That is something that the United Water Conservation District is pursuing down in Ventura County. So they are actually starting to construct their phase 1 extraction barrier. They're doing a phase 1 of just the extraction only, and they're simply taking out the brackish water and putting it back into the Magoo Lagoon because it's brackish water that they're just returning to the ocean. So it's not, if you were just extracting and putting it back, it wouldn't be concentrated because it wouldn't have the treatment associated with it. That's what's concentrating.
Well, the big challenge would be another outfall because presumably that might be a quantity that would even exceed our outfall capacity and but it probably is an idea worth looking into because completely different set of costs associated with that. It's just pumping costs. It's not extracting salt from water, which loves to hang on to salt. After all, it's the universal solvent, right? And that takes energy to do that. So if you're not doing any of that, you're not expending that energy, maybe shorter pipeline runs, don't know, but certainly urge you to take a look at that. So the well spacing here is pretty critical for making this work, right? And
that's been our exercise, was to figure that out.
Okay. And in addition, this is really two underground dams, one to create this barrier or dam in the 180 aquifer, and then another to create it in the 400-foot aquifer. What about the deep aquifer?
So the deep aquifers have not seen seawater intrusion at this time. We don't know at what point in time it could occur. The medium alternative in lieu supply would replace deep aquifer pumping. So that is how we're trying to address the deep aquifers issue.
Okay, great. Yeah, because those layers right along the coast are creating. Now, would you have to put in separate wells for the 180 and the 400 at each of those extraction well locations?
They're conceived to be clustered. So I think they're single locations with two depths.
Dual perfs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a single column perforated in both.
No, it'd be two columns.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then the only other concern, you notice the northernmost well, your projected models show a fair amount of seawater intrusion in the red
and it stops at that boundary, but I assume that boundary is quite artificial.
Yeah, that's the boundary of the Elkhorn Slough and of the 1,400-foot aquifer. So the other side of that is Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency.
Right.
They do have seawater intrusion on that side. I think that's part of Paret's bigger visioning, where we need to have additional conversations with other entities on the boundaries.
Yes, because if you're doing very heavy pumping up there and they haven't done anything, you may be pulling seawater intrusion more rapidly into their area of responsibility. And I can imagine, I just imagine that they might be a little annoyed at that. Thank you. Those are my questions. Any other questions, please?
Yeah, I know that the cost is high, but the cost of not doing anything is going to be much higher. If you look at the modeling and the replacement of the wells of the new water, all those wells, if we don't do anything, they're going to come in, the state will come in and make us stop pumping to stop seawater intrusion. So all those wells would be out of service anyway. That's the worst case scenario. It's being put on probation. And then the state takes over and says, we got to stop seawater intrusion. And all these wells got to shut off. So if you study the modeling, you'll see how many wells need to be shut off. And so I don't think this county can take that kind of an economic hit. Because we're talking a lot of farmland. I drive to Salinas every day almost, and that's a lot of farmland there from Castroville, from the ocean all the way out to Salinas. And you see where the problem area is. It's out in Blanco and in that area also. So, and then I think to Tom's question, we haven't seen in all the modeling or what Monterey County Water Resources Agency is doing on seawater intrusion. We've never seen it come around up there in front on the north side. As you can see how on the south side, it does want to hook around. So if we don't put any wells in Marina right there,
Could be a problem.
could be a problem. We've been told that by the hydrologists. That's it.
Thank you. Scott, did you have anything?
No, I've learned if you wait long enough, your question will be answered. So I'm good.
Strong move. Part of what I'm wondering too, and I think this is all going to be figured out in the process. By the way, thank you both for the work that you are doing, because obviously it's needed. This has created a deeper level of conversation than I think we anticipated allocating time to, but it's because that's how important it is. And I appreciate the questions that are coming up, and hopefully some of the questions that are being raised help provide some additional layers for you all to consider as we're figuring out these alternatives. I guess part of my question is, you raised a couple of other alternative projects that we're looking at, the CSIP optimization, the aquifer storage and recovery demand management. And I guess I'll put it in form of a statement. And if you have any additional thoughts, I wonder how we do a cost benefit analysis on how much energy we're putting into multiple different things versus one project. I can see value in it, but if we're going to spend a lot of money on a project, what does that look like for us to make sure that we're looking at the execution of project or projects in totality, looking at the cost benefit analysis? So just a thought. I don't know if you have any.
We owe that to our stakeholders. We need to find the best project at the most reasonable cost. So we're going to be looking at everything. At some point, we need to stop looking and start doing something because the clock is ticking and the seawater is moving and DWR is looking at us to have a construction project. So I think, but that's what our stakeholders are asking us. We need to be able to quantify. We need to be able to either blend or add together several small projects and see if they can do the same addressing seawater intrusion, and what is the cost of that. So that's next 12 months, we'll be working on that. We would love to come back, Paul. I know, that's been way too much time. I'd love to come back here.
Based on how much time you took, you can come back in 2027.
When I was just gonna say, you do have some of a deadline to put something forward, right, which is early 2027. So my next question for you is, if this is the project that moves forward, who do you all see as potentially being the lead agency to potentially execute this?
I think it could be a partnership between many agencies because it's a large project. It involves treatment, it involves distribution. And so we'll be looking for willing partners. I don't think we would like to create another agency. That's one thing that I'm pretty convinced that having
Wanna
another
avoid.
JPA, another board, probably not advisable. But yes, that's another how it's going to be structured and who will take it on.
Perfect. Just two final thoughts on this. I wonder where it's appropriate for us to question CalAM's desal project if this project ends up moving forward, because I imagine that there'd be so much supply that it would seem incredibly inefficient, particularly when you look at the cost of CalAM's desal project. And it'll be really interesting to see what CalAM comes back with when they provide those updated numbers. But when we're already looking at upwards of 7,000-8,000 per acre foot, and we're seeing that this is significantly less, as a ratepayer for CalAM, it gives me a little bit of pause and wondering if we can also be partners in the region if this project moves forward. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, I think questions are good, and making sure that we're looking at it from all perspectives to really poke holes to make sure that whatever that project is that moves forward is adequate. I guess I would ask all of the decision makers, not just in this room, but beyond this room, to I think be cautious in regards to our tone and approach towards this project or otherwise, because it can seem as if we're trying to cut our feet off before we even fully can appreciate all the elements associated with it. We should absolutely take a critical eye to it, but I think from what I can see, this is probably the best regional, and that's what I've been preaching ever since I've been on this board, a regional project that we can all work together on. And dare I say, it's desal essentially, right? Which is divisive in and of itself. But when this can solve a lot of the needs in our region, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're taking a really serious look at this and make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. So I really want to appreciate you both so much for coming in today. With that, I'm going to take out for public comment. And so at this time, if folks are on Zoom and would like to speak on this item, just ask you to use the raise hand function. Is there anybody in the room in the meantime? Please, sir. You can just come right up and go to the mic.
So my name is Steve Waite from GHC Engineering. I was just passing by, just turned out my background is pretty germane to this situation. I come from the desal world. I helped develop, run, and operate the two desal plants in Santa Barbara and Carlsbad. And so just to give the board a little perspective, $1 billion, Carlsbad, 100 million gallons a day taken in, 50 million gallons a day delivered to Seneca County, $1 billion project. Operation budget is a little more than this. That price of water at the plant is $1,800 acre foot. Debt service delivered up to 1,100 feet is about $2,500 acre foot. Santa Barbara desal plant, about a little less than 3 million gallons of delay delivered, is about 1815 acre foot. So just perspective, this plant is well within the rounds of cost, operation, capital budget, operation. It's well within the realm, and just I have no dog in the whole in this race. I live in Santa Cruz, happen to be coming by, seeing Paul and the team. But so just give you a little perspective. This is not it's a big number, but it is tried and true. It's been done before. The plant is very, very feasible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else in the room like to speak during public comment? All right, I'm going to jump back to online. I don't see any hands. Last chance. Anybody want to speak on this item? All right, seeing none. Thank you again for the presentation. We look forward to see you before 2027. I'm just kidding. Thank you too. All right, and with that, we will go to item number 8, which is consent agenda. Anybody on the board wish to pull anything from the consent? Any comments, questions? All right, seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment. Anybody in the public want to speak on anything related to consent? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation.
So move.
Second.
Rain,
That's rain. Wow.
sky water.
Wild. Okay, sorry. I'm like a squirrel. Which is not abnormal. Okay. Any last comments? All those in, oh, sorry, roll call, please.
Sand City,
Aye.
Squirrel moment.
County of Monterey,
Aye.
Seaside,
Aye.
Marina Coast,
Yes.
Delray Oaks,
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Castroville,
Yes.
Veranda,
Yes.
Monterey.
Yes,
Motion carries unanimously.
thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 9A, Budget Personnel Committee. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Move to receive the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion, I'm sorry, for approval. All those in, I'm sorry, roll call.
Sand City,
Things going
Aye.
on.
County of Monterey,
Aye.
Seaside,
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Salinas.
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Castroville,
Yes.
Veranda,
Yes.
Monterey.
Yes,
Motion carries unanimously.
and moving on to item 9B, Recycled Water Committee meeting minutes. Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back for a vote. Roll call, please.
Sand City,
Aye.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Seaside,
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Salinas.
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Castroville,
Yes.
Veranda,
Yes.
Monterey.
Yes,
Motion carries unanimously.
awesome. And with that, we will move on to item 10A. Our first action item is to receive fiscal year 2023-24 annual comprehensive financial report and popular annual financial report. And I will pass it to Lawrence for introduction to the presentation.
Yes, my name is Lawrence. I'm the Director of Finance of the agency. And I would like to introduce Brandon Young, our partner with LSL. He's going to present the fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report result for the year. With that, I will turn over to Brandon.
Thank you, Lawrence. I think there's a PowerPoint. We have it there.
Yes.
What is it?
I think we should have our meeting outside.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, board. Good evening. My name is Brandon Young. I'm a partner with LSL. I've been with the firm about 13 years. I've been involved with the agency's audit for about 7 in different capacities and different roles. As a manager, now as a partner, and now kind of helping transition to another partner who's been involved as well. So you can, next slide, please. So this was the core team that worked on the audit this year. So Christian Towns and James Butera really oversaw the day-to-day. They don't live locally, so I'm in Sacramento. So I'm here and I've been involved with the agency for a while. So we kind of work together as a team to make sure things get done. Christian is the partner that really reviewed the file and kind of worked together on the financial statements. And James worked closely with Lawrence and his team, making sure that the audit was moving along. Obviously, we're doing this a little later than we have in years past, which is understandable and happens from time to time. But I wanted to acknowledge that they're key members of the team as well. Next slide, please. So we are the external auditors. So this audit presentation is for fiscal year 2024. Obviously, we're getting ready to close 2025. So the single audit is due on March 31st. We did make the deadline. So everything has been submitted before March 31st. So I'm happy to report that. And we're looking to get back on track next year. So this is in results of the financial results for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. Next slide, please. This just kind of lays out the scope of the year. So our interim field work, which is focused on processes and internal controls, a lot of questionnaires, meeting with staff to ensure that internal controls are in place, that any errors or fraud would be caught by district staff before we was caught by the auditors, occurred in July. It's later than we have done in the past, but I think with the staff turnover this year, it was necessary to delay it and wait a little bit. And then year end was in January and February. To give you kind of context, historically, we've done that in September or October is usually when it happens. Obviously, with the change in staff, then you needed more time to kind of get ready. It didn't make sense to start that early and try to audit something that wasn't really ready to go. So we started a little later, which I think kind of resulted in just a little bit of some of the comments that you see in the letters this year, which is not uncommon. It happens when there's turnover. And Lawrence and our team worked very hard to kind of get it to this point, and looking forward to getting back on track next year. Next slide, please. So just high level, some of the results. So the result is still an unmodified opinion. That's the opinion that you want. If there was an opinion that was modified, what that would mean is that there were either numbers or disclosures in the financial statements that we were not able to get comfort over, or we felt were not properly supported within the document or supporting documentation. So the opinion is still unmodified, although it was later. There's nothing that came up that we couldn't really get support for, get our questions answered on. The report on internal controls is a key part of it, where there are comments or findings listed. So we don't express an opinion on internal controls, but it is a key part of a government audit where you have to get an understanding of the internal controls that go into how they process transactions and how they end up in the report that's in front of you. So the items that came up, I would attribute primarily to just new staff being involved and kind of the timing of when old staff left. It was more of an issue trying to, I think, get things started and get to the finish line on time, and trying to kind of learn. There is some nuances and uniqueness to the accounting for this agency compared to some other government agencies with different funding sources and different loans that can be a little bit complex. So really the results of the findings you see were just adjustments that had to be made throughout the audit process to make sure that the numbers were accurately reflected in the proper year in the financial statements. So all adjustments have been made and are recorded, but when you have adjustments of a certain dollar amount and magnitude, we're required to disclose them. So that really is a result of those findings that you see in the report. I will mention there are 3 total. 2 of them are related to the same item. The one related to the single audit is for the WIFIA loan. Really, that funding had to be recorded as federal funding and audited for compliance, which it has been. It just was missed initially, so we kind of have to report it twice in 2 places. So it's kind of getting dinged 2 times for the same thing. So hopefully we're hoping these are just 1-year items with new staff and turnover that next year are rectified and won't be an issue moving forward. So next slide, please. No difficulties with the audit. Lawrence started at a difficult time in an audit cycle, and I think he was able to get it across the finish line and is very detailed and diligent in his work. So I think without him, I don't think we'd be in this spot yet. So obviously personnel changes lead to kind of a learning curve. That's tough when you start, 5 months ago, to try to get up to speed and try to answer questions about the previous year that you weren't involved in. So it does present challenges, but handled it very well. And I think we got to this point, and I think we're on a good track for next year. We had no disagreements about accounting or any accounting principles. Nothing came up that appeared to be fraud, waste, or abuse. So happy to report that for this year. Next slide, please. The single audit is the compliance audit. So it was pretty much 99% that WIFIA loan that you all have is $12.1 million that are related to fiscal year 24 transactions. So this audit is specific to making sure that the funding is being used for what that federal program is intended for. So the sampling of transactions, making sure that all the money that went out was for its intended purpose. It was in compliance with what's called the compliance supplement that's issued by the Office of Management and Budget, federal government. And it basically accounts for all of the federal expenditures of the agency. You don't always have a single audit. It's only really come up when you guys used to have the SRF loan. That was federal funding, and now the WIFIA loan. So it's not something that's common for this agency every year. But as you do these large projects, a lot of these are funded often by federal programs, or they used to be. We'll see, I guess, what federal programs are available here in the future. It's kind of it depends on the day. Right now, you do have the WIFIA loan, so that was a result. So the only issue that came up was what I mentioned, where it just wasn't initially recorded as federal expenditures. It wasn't recorded wrong. It just needed to be reflected in this report, and it has been tested. And we were able to get all the documentation that we needed. So next slide, please. So that's high level, kind of where we're at this year. Obviously, we're later than we wanted to, but I think we can get back on track with some consistent staffing and kind of a even better kind of enhanced report. So any questions you have about the audit process or the financial statements themselves, I'm happy to answer them now.
Thank you for the presentation, Brandon. We'll open it up for questions. Board. Not everybody at once. We're happy? I'm seeing a lot of head nods. All right, well, let's take this out to the public and see if we have any comments when we get back from the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? Anybody? Trying to find somebody here.
Okay, yeah, it's all right.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Any last minute thoughts? Well, I think it just speaks to how well your presentation was.
Let's go with that, yeah. that works. Hear the word audit, they're just like, "Oof, all right.
No, seriously, I know that we recognize some areas for the agency to work on in the audit, and this is exactly the purpose. And actually, I think we should be celebrating the fact that we were able to identify some areas to address, and they don't seem so house on fire that causes me any concern. So just appreciate the work that you're doing in collaboration with our staff, and look forward to the continual efforts and collaboration. So
Sounds good.
thank you, Brandon.
All right, thank you.
Okay. With that, we will move on to item 10B, which is to consider request by Marina Coast Water District to evaluate the district becoming M1W's billing vendor. And with that, I will pass it to Paul.
Thank you, Tyler. So yeah, this is a discussion that I've had actually with the Marina Coast General Manager, Rem Scherzinger. So after last year, after we did not move the tax rolls and decided to stay as our own billing agent, we received a letter that is attached to the staff report from Rem saying that they would like for us to consider Marina Coast taking over the billing for their customers. So not for everyone, but just for the Marina Coast customers. To put that in perspective, it's about 10% of all of our customers. I think it was like 6,700 versus the 65,000 that we have. I did tell Rem, we're going to put it on hold until we have that discussion at the board level on what you all wanted to do, which happened back in February, I guess that was. And so hence the reason bringing it back for the board discussion. As you probably well know, there's three components to our invoicing and billing, and they're laid out here. One is the customer data management, which our customer service department does. Other thing is certainly billing services and then actually collecting or getting the payments. Currently, and for the past history, we've used a third-party billing vendor. So what we're saying, or what Marina Coast is requesting, is could they take over that billing vendor portion for the customers that are in the Marina Coast service area. So Marina Coast sends bills already to their water and their wastewater customers. They're somewhat unique in that instance in doing this. Our agreements, it doesn't say that we will or we won't be billing those customers. It says we shall bill. So it is not as definitive as a light switch. So hence the reason bringing it to the board for consideration. The way the agenda item is laid out is we tried to identify some of the pros and cons of allowing Marina Coast to take over this 10% of the customers for billing. This by no means is an exhaustive list. I'm sure we can continue discussing it. This is more for food for thought for the board discussion. If the board would like to move forward with looking into this, there's far more we'd have to analyze to understand the feasibility of shifting it over. At this point, we don't know the financial impacts because we don't know what Marina Coast would charge us and so on. So there's a lot of devils in the detail type portion of moving forward. This is truly to get the board's direction on where you would like us to go based on the request from Marina Coast. With that, I can try to answer more questions, or I would certainly ask Tom if he had any other comments.
Yeah, let's start with Tom since he's the representative of that agency and see if he has any additional feedback.
Thank you very much, President Williamson. And I did have a conversation with our general manager and staff on this topic, and particularly based on the questions that you see in Paul's good staff report on page 216 of the board packet, if you want to flip to that. See, everybody has, you do, really do, awesome. So I went over these questions with him to see what at least preliminary answers, of course, subject to negotiations and board approvals on both sides, yada, yada, yada. Can the data be exported from Marina One Water's current and future ERP systems for compatibility with the billing system? What Rem said was conceptually, that wouldn't have to happen. You would calculate the total bill for all of Marina Coast customers and send us a dollar amount. And we would remit that dollar amount to you. We could do that on a bi-monthly basis if that worked out well for you. We're trying to keep it simple. Do we have the staff capacity to provide customer support related to the Monterey One Water fee? Yes, absolutely. Wouldn't be a problem with that. How often would Monterey One Water receive remittance of his fees? Well, subject to negotiation, but we'd be perfectly happy with your current bi-monthly. But if you want monthly, we do monthly. If you start asking for every minute, that would begin to stress us a little bit, right? For non-payment of connection and capacity fees, as different from service fees that folks currently pay, my understanding is where Marina Coast and Monterey One Water are both currently in the process of talking about capacity fees and straightening out records because there's some historical recordations of who paid what in the past that's all got to get straightened out. So that's an issue that would just be subject to future negotiation, might not even be part of this whole proposed process. It might be a separate offline. What would Marina Coast charge for the billing services? I have no idea. Again, subject to, but as a public agency, by law, my understanding as a general principle, we can't charge more than what it actually costs us to provide that service, right? So that probably puts an upper limit on it. With respect to renters, well, if we're just getting a bill for all of our customers, we wouldn't be distinguishing. You would tell us, and we'd worry about how to collect from our customers in order to pay that dollar amount. Again, subject to devil in the details sort of discussions. And if only a portion of the bill is paid, what's the priority in posting the payment? Well, that just, again, if it's a bulk single check, so to speak, coming to Monterey One Water, you are the priority. It's a bill. We got to pay it to you. So it wouldn't be an issue on a customer by customer basis. And you might say, well, why are you worried about a customer who doesn't pay? It's because we have the ability to put a 24-hour water shutoff notice on that customer. And they're either going to pay within that 24-hour period, or they're not going to have water. So it's different from the lien situation that we face here at Monterey One Water. Anyway, that's my understanding of the concept. Thank you.
Staff, did you have any thoughts as it relates to the additional feedback? Anybody?
No, I mean, it's good feedback. Obviously, there's a couple things we still would need to work out if the board decides to move forward.
Okay. Opening it up for additional questions.
Yeah.
Comments.
I just want to commend Marina Coast for reaching out and trying to help us out. I think we're just a little early on making a decision like this because we know that our optimum is to get onto the tax rolls and the savings of time and efficiency that would bring to us. And so that could happen next year or a year after that. I think we should play that out first before we start segregating our customers in 10%. So I'm not going to say no to their offer, but let's just play this. Let's just work it out to see if we can get on the tax roll first.
Any other thoughts, please?
So the concern I have is when and I'll direct this question of Paul, but when we pull 10% out, does that affect our rate with the vendor? I mean, are we, the billing vendor today, if we take out 10% of that business, is it going to make everybody else's charges go up?
I don't know. We have not approached the billing vendor yet. And I think I may have mentioned this is depending how long we're in this, I would really like to look into a different vendor at some point.
Right.
So to answer your question, I don't know.
Okay.
It makes
I mean,
sense though.
obviously, I wouldn't be supportive if it means my constituents are going to have to pay more because someone else takes on a portion of the billing. That doesn't sound like the way to go. I do agree that, you know, moving forward, our responsibility is to provide the best service to the people that rely on us and to do it most cost effectively. And I think it's been demonstrated that that means that we need to move to the tax basis billing. So I think I agree with you that, you know, let's see how this thing plays out. But I think the responsibility should be providing a better bill and a better billing experience and a more cost-effective billing experience, not a more expensive and clunkier billing system. So, I mean, I think right now we should hurry up and wait.
Any other feedback?
Yeah, I had a question. What is the 10% roughly?
So the 10% with Marina Coast, I think
Number of customers.
Yeah,
So
what is the number of
it's
customers?
6,965 that are in the Marina Coast service area, including their Fort Ord and such. Our total accounts is 67,500.
Yeah. And then you said, Paul, you said something about, your regulations said something about, shall?
Yeah, our agreement with each other about the billing is like M1W shall bill for services.
Okay.
It doesn't say we will bill. So I was just differentiating because in the agreement, there is an opening for you to discuss.
No, okay, I got you. I think I got you. I do think, you know, considering, you know, and I'm just here for this, you know, hour and a half or so, but considering, you know, what we went through, our citizens went through, I think all of our ratepayers went through, you know, here past you guys trying to go to the tax roll. I do think you don't want to go into that conversation clunkier, right? I like that word used, you know, but you know, whatever it is, you know, every time we turn around, you guys are doing something to push people off of this way, push people off that way. And then all of a sudden you want to go back to this concern that you had a year or 2 years ago. I think you just want to increase your service and then go back to that question, as opposed to trying to find ways to decrease your ratepayers. Okay, that was just, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
It seems a bit premature without all of the information. I'm looking up the word of the definition of the word shall. I have a stricter definition.
That's right.
It says here, it used to express what is inevitable. So that seems to me that you shall do it, as opposed to it's more open-ended. You know, and I think particularly if we have a vendor issue, if we shop it, I think I'm guessing it's always better to shop more rather than less. So I think if we're going to be a JPA and you shall do this, I think we need to have all of the information. So a bit premature, in my view.
That's why I was gonna get to. I've been in the Army. I've been in, you know, worked for the state. When I came across shall meant mandatory. That, you know, if you go in the law, shall means mandatory. So that's why I asked the question. I could be wrong. Thank you so much, Chair.
We might have to ask the attorney to
I was just gonna say,
interpret
again,
that,
do you have
'cause
something to say?
yeah,
No,
I
no.
agree with you.
Yeah, but the first thing they learn in law school first day is, you know, the law facts cut both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
I like his definition of
Right.
shall.
It's not mine, it's other lawyers.
Right.
So I mean,
That's
you know, lawyers can disagree, but that's why I asked you, what was your definition of the shall?
And we have no lawyer here. this evening?
Well, I mean, we don't need to decide it tonight. I was just putting that on the record.
Oh, I see what he's online.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a question
Please,
and, I think that's great. They offer from, Marina, Coast Water, but I had a concern, would this, be a conflict? Because we are two agencies and they do have water purchase agreements between you guys, don't you? Or you have agreements, so just question there.
We do have multiple agreements with Marina Coast Water District. One is surrounding Pure Water Monterey and the water and funds going back and forth, and then certainly when they join the JPA. There's a number of others out there, but I don't know. I guess I would have to, depending where we go with this, talk more with Jim Gilpin about the legality of it and the impacts to all those agreements.
And then just one question. So what's the name of the company that is doing the billing?
Currently AFTS.
ANTS.
AFTS.
AFTS. So AFTS is doing the billing of our customers currently.
Correct.
Yes.
And then we're moving our ERP system to Oracle. And the package we have purchased with Oracle does have some base billing services. So as we start to implement that ERP system, that is an option for us to explore those base billing services that already come with the package of our ERP system.
So Oracle might eventually be doing some billing for us. I only ask that question because those two entities are not Monterey One Water. We just had a question, Monterey One Water, what does it mean that the agreements say Monterey One Water shall do the billing, but Monterey One Water isn't doing the billing, private companies are doing the billing. So obviously, however Jim Gilpin weighs in on shall,
Right.
we have the option to have somebody else do the billing.
Well, I
Just
think,
want to point that
I think
out.
the issue there's a delegation of authority.
There you go.
M1W is doing the billing through an agent versus a member agency billing for them. I haven't looked at the shell issue, but tend to agree with what's been said. Under the law, a shell is you shall do it, not you may do it, might not do it. So, but I haven't been asked to weigh in on this from Paul directly, so I'll reserve that judgment.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, some incoming attorneys in our ranks here.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Anybody else? I'll just share, I'm inclined to want to support any of our member agencies in trying to create efficiencies for their own organization. I think Ron pointed out a point that is probably near and dear to my heart, given how passionate I was at the last board meeting around us transitioning to the tax rules. I am concerned around making too many changes as it relates to interfering with that process. And I think maybe one of the biggest takeaways that I had from that conversation was just the need for us to make sure that we have really solid messaging around what this looks like and the impact it has to our customers. So I think I agree. I don't think it's a no. I think it's just kind of the order of operations here and making sure that we get this right is just my thought. Please.
We will be able to provide this board with a little more information along those lines because we are completing a customer survey and there were questions related to this on that survey. So we'll be happy to provide that information about our 10% of Monterey One Water's customer base.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Please.
Yeah, that seems like interesting information, and I think that the city of Seaside would be in the same vein, would like to understand that. Maybe it'd be possible for our customers, as small as they may be, if we're just giving them up,
right? So.
I remember when we discussed this at the last meeting that we did talk about doing a survey agency-wide. So I know that that's something that we'll be working on. I think, Mary, I think I remember you bringing that up as part of the discussion. So more to come there. All right, I think we've exhausted this conversation. I'm going to take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? It's because we said all the points. So I'm going to go with. I'll bring it back to the board. Any last comments on this before we move on to the next item? All right, thank you for that discussion. And Tom, appreciate you bringing this forward to us for consideration.
Absolutely.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 11, staff reports.
Thank you, Tyler. Just a couple quick things. One is many of you probably remember back in 2017-ish, we had a spill, and that resulted in a proposed fine from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We negotiated with the board, the regional board at the time, and opted to do what they call a supplemental environmental project. And so you paid a small amount, it was like $10,000. We did a project that benefited the customers in Castroville. And that supplemental environmental project has been satisfied finally. So we got the sign off from the regional board. So that is a chapter that is done. I think it was successful in that instead of the money going to Sacramento and disappearing, it stayed locally substantially. It benefited Castroville, all the people there in terms of better sewer systems. And I think that's a testament to all of our staff that worked on this and got this through. Woo. It is a big woo, actually.
We thank you. The customers would be responsible for those laterals that Monterey One Water came in and replaced.
Yeah.
So they really got the direct impact of dollars.
It was a good solution, I think. Also, I think, we all are aware of the Vistra battery storage facility. Just wanted to keep the board informed. We had a request to accept some of the fire flow water and storm water from those facilities. Ballpark, the fire flow stormwater, one was segmented to 300,000 gallons. Straight stormwater was 400,000 gallons that they were hoping to discharge somewhere. Based on our understanding of the constituents in the water, we declined to take it. The reason there apparently was lithium, which can be particularly bad for a biological treatment plant, other metals, some petroleum products, and VOCs. So just in case you all here, I want to make sure we told you this. If you would care to see any of the emails, strings, or data that we have, we can certainly forward it to you. I also wanted to bring up something real quick on, for many years, we've talked about a long-term agreement between the Water Resources Agency, the City of Salinas, and Monterey One Water on how to coordinate the use of the Salinas ponds and use of the industrial wash water. That's always sort of hit snags. We've done short-term little fixes to get water to the growers when we needed to. Last week, we initiated a discussion based on some of the permit conditions and issues on the ponds. We're trying to put together a 6-month agreement just to get us through the growing season and provide some cover for the City of Salinas to go to the regional board for any issues that they may have. So it is hopeful and likely that we will bring something back to you in the April-May timeframe of easier, shorter version of an agreement that we may revisit every 6 months or so. Obviously, how they operate or how we propose to take the water in May through October is a different beast than November through April. So that is underway as we speak. And then lastly, he's not here tonight, but as you all know, Mike McCullough is leaving us. He's our Director of External Affairs, has been here for, I believe, around 13 years. He's heading next door to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District as an Assistant General Manager. So great opportunity for Mike, very happy for him. Some of the things that he accomplished or helped accomplish while he was here, he sort of stood up our External Affairs Department in terms of outreach, legislative advocacy, keeping tabs on all our entities here as well as a state and federally. Johanna and Rachel right behind me are some of the employees that he brought on and has been working with. What they've accomplished in a very short period of time to start the department, they helped land the $109 million state revolving fund loan for Pure Water, which was one of the last 1% loans that the state put out there. Also, the WIFIA loan that our auditor was just talking about, a $77 million loan from EPA, from the feds, to help fund expansion and hopefully some other things in the near future. And also, they brought in $90 million worth of grants, local, state, federal grants. It's just a tremendous, in my opinion, when you look at the sheer numbers for a staff of 3 people bringing on in and keeping tabs on all those federal and state legislative changes and regulatory changes. He's going to be missed, and on the plus side, he's right next door, so we can still bug him. So
I just want to know how he snuck away from being here today. Oh,
yeah, he's in
good
Italy.
excuse.
He had luckily a trip planned with his wife to be a chaperone for a school trip.
Oh, hard life.
Yeah, it's tough. So anyhow.
So I wanted to provide some information. Vistra isn't a dead issue. They're not happy that we have declined their water coming to our facility. So there's a hydrogeologist that is working actually with Matt and with engineering, and as well as Sarah Stevens, as far as explaining to them why we don't want their water. So you might hear things. Again, they're trying to knock on our door and say, why can't you take our water? So they didn't accept the no. I want to basically defer to Jose Guzman, the manager of operations. Both he and Daryl Harris have kept the home fires burning for the last 2 weeks, and really appreciate, knock on wood, things not blowing up until this morning. So he will give you an update on what blew up this morning.
Yes, good morning, Chair Williamson and members of the board. Some quick updates for you. At about 4:40 this morning, the SBR, actually the whole facility, the entire regional treatment plant, lost power. Within about, it's probably about 7:30, we started getting commercial power back, with the exception of the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project. What we ended up finding as we investigated, because PG&E came on site, they assessed it, they updated the outage map saying we had power because all signs were pointing to us having power, but our utilities team kept finding dirty power on one of the legs when they were checking why we couldn't get SBRP going. And what they found was a burnt jumper. And then PG&E came back, reassessed. At that point, they determined it would take a crew. So at about 5:15, I received the last update that they were on site. If all goes well, we should be back up and running by 9. We were able to provide water for irrigation with the level in the pond, as well as running wells today. So again, hopefully that's resolved here soon. We'll likely have to be in research to build residuals back up, and then by tomorrow morning, hopefully have enough level to meet the irrigation demand. So the current rain should help us out. Another recycle project coming back online soon will be the SRDF. We're working with WRA staff on some last minute inspections on some of the equipment, but we think that if all goes well, within a week, we should have that running. And, that provides about an additional 20 to 24 million gallons of water a day available for us to provide the CSIP irrigation system.
Jose, I'm going to go ahead and interject. So this is the first year. The last 2 years, we weren't able to grab that water until a month into the ability to grab water, which is April 1st, because of the flooding. So we are ecstatic that we're able to start grabbing the river water. So just wanted to make that point. And the last 2 years, we've done very well with SRDF, having high yield on a time period that we didn't weren't able to grab the first month because the river was running too fast and too high that we couldn't virtually take any of that water. So we're very happy.
Yeah, we just had the presentation by SVB GSA, and I think this is really pertinent. So today, demands were about 45 million gallons per day at NCSIP,
Yes.
ballpark. Let's say 45 million gallons per day. Well, you just heard we don't have SRDF, the power failure, we don't have SVRP. So all their demands had to come from the wells out in the area. So we're pumping the groundwater that they're telling us that we don't have. It's obviously this is so critical to the entire basin. And there's only 3 sources of water: the river, recycled water, and wells. So hopefully they can get that thing back up and running. You guys can get it back up and running.
Yes, hopefully.
No pressure.
And
Yeah,
finally,
no pressure.
an update on AWPF. So up until this point in the expansion project, there was a lot of ancillary equipment, valves, additional piping. And now we're getting to the point where it's actually major pieces of equipment going in. A few weeks ago, we commissioned the new Amiad auto strainers that replaced the Acmes at the RO feed side of the plant. And then tomorrow, it got postponed today because of high winds. Wednesday, there's another 24-hour shutdown where we have a decarbonator tank that's going to be replaced. And again, it's a major piece of equipment. Fortunately, the challenge with this is just the magnitude of the project. It's a very large tank, and it's the logistics of having the crane, removing the old tank, putting in the new tank, and then commissioning it. As far as the commissioning process of it, it's just changing a few instruments on level because it's a larger tank. No programming changes, so I think it's more of a mechanical challenge, more than instrumentation and programming. But nonetheless, it kind of, it does kind of give us a little bit of a higher concern because we are getting into the point now where, if these shutdowns don't go well, it could produce a significant impact to injection if we can't come back up and running smoothly. So yeah, any questions you may have, I'm here to answer.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for the
All right,
presentation.
you're welcome.
Anybody else on staff have
Lawrence?
I want to give a update on the budget development process. We have already kicked off the fiscal year 2026 budget with the Budget and Personnel Committee. In March, we have presented the wastewater fund, the CIP, the capital project, and also the Water Resource Agency budget to the BPC. And next Friday, we have another BPC meeting, and we'll present the Pure Water Monterey budget and do a overall agency budget. Regarding the presentation to the board, we scheduled 3 sessions. The first session is scheduled April the 28th. This will be a kickoff meeting with the board with a very high-level budget overview. And then May the 22nd, we'll have a budget workshop focusing on the budget itself. And the last budget session will be June the 2nd. We will answer any other question that the board will have, and then we'll adopt the budget on June the 2nd. So this will wrap up the budget for the FY26, and we'll get ready for the year-end audit for the FY25.
Thank you for the update. Looks like we're done with staff side. Bring it to the board member comments. Reports, please.
So I just want to say thanks to staff, especially O&M staff, for handling these challenges that have been cropping up. And also good luck to our PR staff filling in with a vacancy for don't know how long that will remain vacant, but keep up the good work. Thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else? I just have 2 things. For folks that may have missed it in the consent agenda, was the recommendation for board committee assignments. And just one notable change is we've transitioned the budget personnel committee to meet quarterly and as required. So just kind of wanted to make folks aware of that change that may have gone unnoticed. And then ask for staff, as we're getting closer to the end of construction for the expansion project, I'm wondering if we can start bringing Dave in to kind of give a little bit more frequent. I don't know what point that is, but as we get closer to the end, I think it might be helpful to have some report outs from him on that.
Yeah, and Dave is scheduled to be here for next month's board meeting with the full update on Pure Water Monterey. Yeah.
All right. Alrighty. And with that, we have closed session scheduled